Hello, everyone. My name's Larry Spivak, president of the Illinois Labor History Society. Just a little while ago, I was on the phone with a friend from Washington, D.C., and I said, we have this incredible problem this week. This is the evening of our annual fundraiser for the Illinois Labor History Society. And suddenly, this last 2-3 days, like 80 people have sent in tickets after the deadline was 2 weeks ago. And we're calling and saying, can you put out another table? Can you put out another table? Can you put out another table? Isn't this a great problem to have? And she said, well, you know what her thoughts were, and it resonates because of what's happened in the last month, and really, we could say the last 35 years, but we could say the last 150 years if we're talking labor history, but it's the need for people to be in community. And people are saying, oh man, there was that dinner, the ticket, labor history, yeah, we forgot we're gonna do it. And usually people say, okay, well, I'm not gonna this year because it's late or whatever, but I think that this is the reason. It's been, it just makes so much sense to me. And as you can see, we have nearly a full room, and I would also, and I do believe it's who we're honoring tonight. And I hope you've looked at the program book. Of course, we honor the 100-year anniversary for reasons that historians and sociologists have said 1916 is the year for honoring the Great Migration, and I trust that that's one of the many years. But it's such an important seminal time in our history, a word I always use when we talk about who we're honoring or what event, but the Great Migration brings us together. And I think the Great Migration of those African Americans who came up from the South to all major cities and to states around the country, but here in particular, Chicago and Illinois, as we honor somebody that's not from Chicago, but Southern Illinois, which is the Illinois Labor History Society, our friends over there with Milton McDaniel. I'm so happy that you all came out. Before I say anything else, I want to take a moment to mention two people. On your table, there are a couple sheets. It's a sheet about our friend Frank Rosen, who just passed this last week. Now, I'm going to guess that a fair number of you knew Frank Rosen, but if you didn't, the sheet will tell you a little bit about him. But he was president of the United Electrical Workers, and I believe it was 1976, District 11. I don't know where Carl is, his son. Carl, where'd you go? Carl, would you stand up? Just because I want us to take a moment of silence just to think about Frank. For those of you who knew him, I knew him when I got out of college, and he was just so, I think he's important to the labor movement in ways that others in our society don't recognize. And so to Frank Rosen, who's contributed so much, I know there's a memorial in February 4th. You could see Carl and talk about it, but I just want to take a moment for Frank Rosen. Thank you. I also want to mention somebody who's probably, I guess for sure, I'm still in denial about it, but we hired a young woman, Stephanie Sewell-Furtado, 2 years ago, about this time. One of her first events was our dinner 2 years ago, and you should have seen her eyes when things were happening, and deer in the headlights, even though she's very, very skilled, very talented, but when you suddenly have 300 people in a room and you're not quite sure where everyone's sitting, it can be a little difficult. Anyway, Stephanie took a job recently with the University of Illinois Labor Education Program to fulfill some of her life dreams. We wish that her life dream was Labor History Society forever. She's brought so much to this organization in just the 2 years, and I think part of it is demonstrated by the number of people who are here. And so I want to say thank you to Stephanie Sewell-Furtado. Stephanie, where are you? She probably stepped out of the room at this very moment. Okay, well, I'm not saying it again. Honestly, I really wasn't going to say anything about the election. I wasn't, but Then the other day, I heard this thing. Some people were talking, reminiscing about the good times when they were young and they were playing Monopoly. And somebody said, who would have thunk that going bankrupt in Atlantic City would be a stepping stone to President of the United States? Well, so we have it. I know some people are saying, how can this happen? Why did this happen? And I swear, I'm not going to go on and on about the election. But, you know, what does it say when 130 million people in this country who are eligible don't even vote? 130 million don't vote or didn't. Is it voter suppression? Is it voter repression? Is it voter depression? I mean, they make drugs for that, right? But in my mind, it's all about a movement to get over it. And we're all on social media or watching the news incessantly, although I think everybody I know stopped for a week after the election. But I'm reminded especially through my work with the ILHS that rank and file activists are the one that are always saying to us, how come we don't know our history? Why aren't they teaching us the history? Or how come I didn't know this? And so on and so forth. And it really inspires me because it comes from workers and unions that we organize, and especially the younger workers. And think about the election of the millions of people who were inspired to actually participate. And those of us who have done labor history for a long time, even when we were younger, now there are so many folks that are so much younger than me. It's fantastic. I love it. That's the future. And they're involved and they're participating. And so I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful. I think it's important. I want to do a very short review, just so you know what this Illinois Labor History Society is about, in addition to honoring important people who have changed the world, not just Chicago, not just Illinois, not just the United States, in so many ways that are tangible and intangible. But just in this last year, and Stephanie's back in the room after I gave her accolades. Now she shows up. And much of this, listen, I have a day job working for AFSCME Council 31, and I can't do the kind of programs I wish I could do, even though I've had an opportunity to give what was once the very young Jackson Potter a labor history tour, still very young in my mind. Anyway, it's, I'm thinking about the daughter of Les O'Rear is here. I saw Lynn a moment ago. We dedicated the bench at the Stockyard Gate to Les O'Rear this year with the help of the Laborers Union. There's Lynn, Les, our hero. The tours with United Auto Workers, Local 551, and Women Building Nations Conference, and the events that we always do, helping out with the Memorial Day Massacre, and the Labor Day at Pullman. And by the way, we have a table here, or several people from Pullman, because we now have, because of President Obama's executive order, Pullman National Park. Where's the Pullman? Where's Pullman? Folks from Pullman. There they are. Teacher workshops. As we often are asked, can't we do more helping teachers learn labor history? We've been told by teachers that many teachers have said this, they do not want more legislation that compels them to have to do something, but they want resources to be able to teach labor history. And by your help, we're going to continue to be able to do that, as certainly the teachers' unions do that, but we can assist and we can help, and we know we need to do that. The muralist Hector Duarte did a talk, who some of you know, the great murals in Pilsen and other places, which we sponsored. Sasha Ruther, the grandson of Victor Ruther, who helped us with the Wisconsin Labor History Society show the movie Brothers on the Line and do a talk. Iowa Labor History Society that didn't exist before in the capacity of actually doing programs asked us to come out. Debbie Pope and I, Debbie from the Chicago Teachers Union, who's going to be up here a little bit later to share a few thoughts. We went out there to help Iowa Labor History Society get started on a labor history society. There are many other programs. Some of them are listed in the book and the photos. But I hope that for those of you who are here, you hopefully will continue to support us. And that's why at some point during dinner, I'm going to call up that young Jackson Potter, because he's going to help us out. I'm going to just say one other thought, or a thought of somebody else. This isn't partisan. I know there's many feelings about this, but it turned out that Bernie Sanders was in Naperville a week or so ago, and 3,000 people showed up. But it's the words that he said that, again, speak to all of us. Because Bernie said to these 3,000 people, he said, for those who felt hopeless after the election, as I was not going to talk about it again, you don't have the privilege of giving up or living in despair. Brave people don't run away from a fire. And that's, by the way, the core attributes of the people we are honoring today. Their bravery in light of so many injustices and difficulties. And that's what history is about, is brave people. Brave people who will help us collectively act, to not despair, to not be hopeless. We could look at every injustice, and it would have ended a long time ago had it not been for that attribute. And I think Bernie Sanders captured that in that speech. So tonight we will honor Milton McDaniel, Alcozy Gresham, Elwood Flowers, Dr. Timuel Black, and we will celebrate. And we will celebrate because there have always been crises, but there's always been hard times. I mean, need I say that there have been hangings and there have been Palmer raids, and we could go on and on. But there have been brave people. And our Chicago teachers and all teachers around will continue to be brave as they fight for smaller classes and more resources. Our state AFSCME Council 31 members will be brave as they continue to defy this governor who is trying to gut collective bargaining in Illinois and public services. Our healthcare workers will continue to be brave as they fight for better staffing ratios and respectable wages. Our low-wage workforce, our airport workers, our warehouse workers for justice, our fast food workers, our hospitality workers will bravely fight for 15 and beyond. Our laborers, our steel workers, our trades, our electricians, all of our workers who make and build this country will continue to fight for better contracting standards and health and safety. And those of you who I haven't mentioned, there's thousands of professions and workers of all stripes, we will continue to be brave and fight for social and economic justice because, you know it, an injury to one is an injury to all. Thank you for being here. In a moment, one of the things that I know everybody came for was the dinner. And Blue Plate, thank you very much for being so accommodating and professional. The tables will be released. Brent is going to start that in a moment, but I'd like to call up Reverend Elvis Martin to give us a brief invocation. Elvis Martin is an assistant minister at the Mount Hope Missionary Baptist Church. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So Larry told me, don't go too long. Because all we're going to do is bless the food. But before we bless the food, I have to take just a little license here. Dr. Black, 1980-some, I stepped up to Luke College. Yeah, and I took a Black history course and almost lost my mind. I started working at the Chicago Transit Authority, and Brother Elwood Flowers took me under his wing, and sometimes he just had to push me down because I thought I knew everything. And he told me one day, if you stop, look, and listen, you'll be good at this. And I love him for that. I call him Daddy. I don't say it out loud too much in front of him because I don't want to get him all riled up. But he's a good man. Dr. Black is a good man. And we're honoring good men tonight. So I ask you to bow your head. Amen. Gracious Father, we ask you to come into this room tonight. If there is any doubt in anybody's mind, let them know that you are in charge. Lord, you are the giver. You are the receiver of all the souls sitting in this room tonight. Let us not make a mistake that you have given us leaders in labor. You've given us leaders. You have given us an opportunity, God, to be a part of life. As we move forward in this world, let us all remember, as Larry said, we know how to deal with the bad times. We know how to deal with it. But one thing that we all do, whether you believe in God or not, you got to believe that there's a higher power that will take us to a better place. Amen.
I am so happy at this moment we're going to have somebody share in song with all of us from her heart and soul. This is Deborah Cosi Lane. She's a proud member of ATU 308, a member for more than 25 years. Deborah Cosi Lane has been singing gospel music since she was 5 years old. She has toured in Europe with the Victory Gospel Singers and is here today to inspire us in song. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, everyone. How are you enjoying yourself? That's great. You look awesome. I just want to sing this song to who I call our heroes, the guys, the gentlemen that we are honoring tonight, who stood in the gap for us, who interceded on our behalf for labor movement. I'm from ATU Local 308, where President Kenneth Franklin is our president, Charlie Peacock is our vice president, and Kim Mitchell is our secretary of treasury. And we represent Mr. Elwood Flowers, who are very proud to have him on our team. The song I'm going to sing is Hero, because I just think that every time we step out, they step out on the battlefield for us to go in those negotiation rooms and fight for us, and they spend those times away from their families. They're truly our heroes. So just pray with me as I sing this song. It must have been cold there in our shadows to never see sunlight on your face. You were content to let us shine. That was your way. You always walk a step behind, while we were the ones with all the glory. You were the one with all the strength. Yes, you were. A beautiful face without a name. We never was her 'cause you are the wind beneath our wings. It might have appeared to go unnoticed, but we've got you right here in our hearts. Every one of you we do. We want you to know we know the truth, that none of our lives would be nothing without you. Oh, did you ever know that you're our heroes? Yes, you are. Yeah, everything we would like to be. Oh, now we can fly higher than an eagle, yeah, 'cause you are the wind beneath our wings. Yeah, you are the wind beneath our wings. You sacrificed your life for us, and now you are the wind beneath our wings.
Deborah Cozy Lane, everybody. 308 ATU. Yeah. Deborah and our next performers, because of their inspiration for us, we hope, even though everybody knows the great Reverend Addie Wyatt, will receive a copy of this book, because we have 3 more great performers who are coming up right at this moment to do a short skit. And they are our friends from SAG-AFTRA, Screen Actors Guild, American Federation, Television Radio Artists. And in keeping with tonight's theme on the Great Migration, the program is going to focus on some of the comments and thoughts that some of the men and women must have had about moving from a place of oppression to what would hopefully be a better place, something better in life. So listen closely, and perhaps you'll recognize something one of your ancestors might have said. And I know I may have caught them off guard, so do we have, Jazz, are we ready to go? There you are.
At the beginning of 1916, the black residents of Chicago only made up 2% of the population. And then began the Great Migration, bringing more than 100,000 African Americans to the city from southern states like Alabama and Mississippi in just 3 years. By 1970, 1/3 of the city would be African American. In all, more than 6 million black Americans made the trip out of the South, transforming the workforce and communities across the North, the East, and the West. They moved looking for jobs and opportunity. They moved looking for a better life for themselves and their families.
I pick up my life and I take it with me. And I put it down in Chicago, Detroit, Buffalo, Scranton, any place that is north and east and not Dixie.
I pick up my life and take it on the train to Los Angeles, Bakersfield, Seattle, Oakland, Salt Lake, any place that is north and west and not south.
I am fed up with Jim Crow laws, people who are cruel and afraid, who lynch and run, who are scared of me and me of them.
I pick up my life and I take it away on a one-way ticket, gone up north, gone out west, gone. Langston Hughes.
They picked up their lives and they came. For many, it was a wrenching decision, whether to leave the homes they had always known.
In our homes, in our churches, wherever 2 or 3 were gathered, there is discussion. What is best to do? Must we remain in the South or go elsewhere? Where can we feel that security which other people feel? Is it best to go in great numbers or only in several families? These and many other things are discussed over and over. A black woman in Alabama, 1902.
The lazy laughing South with blood on its mouth, cotton and the moon, warmth, earth, warmth, the sky, the sun, the stars, the magnolias in its south. And I, who am black, would love her, but she spits in my face. And I, who am black, would give her many rare gifts, but she turns her back on me. So now I seek the north, the cold-faced north. But she, they say, is a kinder mistress. Langston Hughes.
I was leaving the South to fling myself into the unknown. I was taking a part of the South to transplant in alien soil, to see if it could grow differently, if it could drink of new and cool rains, bend in strange winds, respond to the warmth of other suns, and perhaps to bloom. Richard Wright.
As the United States moved closer to entering World War I, the factories and the nations geared up to feed the Great War machine. Chicago was booming.
Yes, hog butcher of the world, tool maker, stacker of wheat, players with railroads and the nation's freight handler. Stormy, husky, brawling, city of big shoulders. Carl Sandburg.
Now, once war was declared, immigration from Europe slowed. Factories across the industrial North clamored for workers. The black newspaper, the Chicago Defender, sounded the call, encouraging black Southerners to leave the Jim Crow South and head north. The Pullman Porters, a black labor force who worked on sleeping car trains, helped to circulate the Chicago Defender, delivering copies to Southern communities they passed through.
This is for the Pullman Porters, who organized when people said they couldn't, and carried the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender to black Americans in the South so they would know they were not alone. It was the Pullman Porters who whispered to the traveling men, both the blues men and the race men, so that they both would know what was going on. Nikki Giovanni.
The Pullman Porters had to be careful delivering the news about jobs in the North because white Southerners grew angry at the idea of black labor leaving the sharecropping fields. Despite these dangers, eager Southern readers wrote to the Defender.
Dear Sir, I have been reading the Chicago Defender and seen so many advertisements about work in the North. I thought to write you concerning my condition. I'm working hard in the South, can hardly earn a living. I have a wife and one child and can hardly feed them. I thought to write and ask you for some information concerning how to get a pass for myself and my family. I don't want to leave my family behind, as I can't hardly make a living for them right here with them, and I know they could face hard if I had to leave them. Please, sir, let me hear from you as quick as possible. Lucher, Louisiana, 1917. Now, once they made it to Chicago, black workers, they didn't find no promised land. Oh, many missed their homes, their communities. Restrictive covenants kept black residents from living in many neighborhoods. Discrimination barred the doors to many unions and promotions on the job. Violence and prejudice were facts of daily life.
I was told that we were going to a place where we would be so much better off. I thought it meant the land of the free. But when we came to Chicago, oh, I was so disappointed that we did not have fruit trees in the yard. We did not have vegetables. We did not have cows or chickens. And all of this we had in Brookhaven, Mississippi. During the years that we were struggling to survive as a family, we almost starved because it was so difficult getting work and providing for our family. Addie Wyatt.
Should I have come here? But going back was impossible. Wherever my eyes turned, they saw stricken, frightened black faces trying vainly to cope with a civilization they did not understand. I felt lonely. I had fled one insecurity for another. Richard Wright.
One insecurity for another. At workplaces across the city, employers would often use race as a way to divide the workforce in an attempt to prevent workers from joining together, to demand better pay and better treatment on the job, anger at workplaces, violence in the streets. In 1919, a black youth was drowned after accidentally breaking the color line and swimming in the white section of Lake Michigan. He was stoned to death by a white mob.
Oh, yes. In all parts of the cities, white mobs dragged from cars the black passengers who were wholly ignorant of any trouble and set upon them. The homes of blacks that were isolated in white neighborhoods were burned to the ground, and the owners and occupants beaten and thrown unconscious in the smoldering embers. Meanwhile, rioters in the Black Belt smashed windows and looted shops of the white merchants on State Street. The Chicago Defender.
The violence was especially bad in the neighborhoods around the stockyards. Nearly 40 people, black and white, were killed. 1,000 black families lost their homes to the flames of racial hatred. Black soldiers returning home from serving their country in World War I, they come home to find another battle raging in the streets of Chicago.
Under the promise of a square deal, our boys went cheerfully into the service of the country, hoping that the aftermath of the struggle would find our people in an improved social and industrial condition. Industrially, our position has undoubtedly been benefited by the war. Socially, it has grown decidedly worse. On all sides, we have been made to feel the humiliating pressure of the white man's prejudice. Hence, the race riots. The Chicago Defender.
Now, in the years after 1919, it became clear that if Chicago workers were ever to build their secure lives for themselves and their families, they would have to break down the racial barriers in the workplace and in the labor movement. In the 1930s, a new kind of labor movement began, one that included black workers, such as the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters,
The Steel Workers Organizing Committee.
The Packing House Workers Organizing Committee. The Congress of Industrial Organizations.
the International Ladies Garment Workers,
The National Federation of Post Office Clerks.
The American Federation of Musicians.
United Auto Workers,
The American
Amalgamated Transportation Union.
The American Federation of Teachers.
United Transportation Union,
Chicago, where unions are strong.
Oh, you can't hurt me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. One more time. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union. Oh, you can't scare me. I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die. And in the words of one of my favorite people, Lucy Parsons, who would have said, that song was dedicated to a special person who resides in Springfield. Ugh.
Alma Washington, Jazz Jenkins, and Ashley Dearborn, everyone, SAG-AFTRA. Now for a very important announcement. You want to know this. The bar does close at 8. I just want you to know that. Desserts and coffee are in the back, and we're going to continue in our program. If you quietly approach the bar, please. I want to thank a number of our sponsors. The gold sponsors include AFSCME Council 31 and AFSCME Local 448, but it's like a council. Our silver sponsors include AFSCME Local 2858, the Chicago Federation of Labor, and the Union Labor Life Insurance Company. And our bronze sponsors include AFSCME Local 2081, ATU Local 308, Labor's Local 2, Labor's Great Lakes Region Organizing Committee, SEIU Healthcare, and Smart Transportation. And all of you who have contributed in many different ways and continue to. I don't know if Senator Carol Mosley Braun made it. She said she hoped to be here. Congresswoman Robin Kelly sends her regrets. Tim Dre and Bob Ryder were here for a while from the AFL-CIO and the Chicago Federation of Labor. I would like all the ILHS board members who are here to stand. Well, there's a lot of people standing, so when they're circulating, because I've asked all of them when we do our fundraising to circulate, you'll have met them, eye to eye. And two other very quick things. A good friend of ours, a friend, longtime resident of Oak Park, but goes way back, Bob Simpson, recently had a stroke and has been brought to the Rehabilitation Institute. I know that he's doing well, but those of you who knew Bob were thinking about him. There is a GoFundMe.com campaign for him. And a good friend of ours, local 1989 member, 1989 is over here. Chalicia Cooper, who has volunteered for the Illinois Labor History Society over the last couple of years, had a terrible tragedy when her house burned down, and there is a GoFund campaign for her as well. So Chalicia Cooper, Bob Simpson, our hearts go out to you. Let's make sure I get this right. We're going to have it'll take care of itself, but what I'd like to do is ask our president from the Chicago Teachers Union, Karen Lewis, to come on up. All of you, there's nobody that could not have been paying attention. You could have tried not to pay attention, but you wouldn't have known the fight of the Chicago Teachers Union. You have to know about it wherever you live in this country because of the courage and, as we talked earlier, the bravery of teachers in Chicago. Karen Lewis, who is now internationally acclaimed, but that's not her reason for being the leader that she is. It's because she's an educator at heart, and she cares about teachers, and mostly, if not, is compassionately about the children of Chicago. This is why it is a mission for us to do what we do, and Karen Lewis has some introductions to make.
Thank you, Larry. There are some amazing people in this room. There are people I've known since I was a child. Denise Gresham. She and I were classmates at Kosminski Elementary School. She's a mean double Dutch jumper. I can tell you that right now. I was asked to introduce Debbie Pope from our local CTU. I've known Debbie for quite some time. We've always been in the opposition, to be honest with you. And we've always fought for what we thought was right, which is a democratic union, a rank and file union, and a union that responds to its membership and the communities that they serve. She tried to convince me to run for president many, many years ago, and I said, no, thank you. Not for me. And then she snookered me into a lunch meeting one day where she took me out to one of my favorite restaurants, Cedars, Mediterranean. And she said, Jesse Sharkey and this young kid, Jackson Potter, have started a new caucus. But we're really just gonna do some reading and some studying of what's going on in the world. Well, then she had me hooked because I'm a nerd. So I said, okay, well, I'll go to a meeting. So I went to the meeting, climbed up 3-4 flights of stairs. This is when I was really fat too. 3 or 4 flights of stairs in April, and it was hot that April at Pilsen Alliance. And there were about 15 people there, and they were all talking about what was going on in education in Chicago and how these rich people were making decisions about how we are supposed to do our work. And they had articles for us to read. Then they put out this book called Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. It was the first time I heard the term neoliberalism and the Chicago boys and what happened in Chile in 1973, because I don't know where I was. I was in college. I don't remember any of this stuff other than I remember them overthrowing Allende. So what I realized was I didn't know anything. And Debbie Pope said, you know plenty. Just keep coming back. You'll learn more as you go along. And I just want to say that Debbie was born and raised in Brooklyn, which I always thought was very cool. And she spent her youth and her holidays and weekends with her mom, who was a social worker at the New York Housing Authority. So Debbie's been involved with working people and working class people for a really long time. She got out of New York, went to the University of Wisconsin, got kicked out for being a rebel, duh. She was expelled for political activities, because, you know, that happened a lot. And she came to Chicago and went to Roosevelt University, which has always been there for a lot of students. They go other places and decide this was not for me. And guess what she did? She drove a cab to make ends meet. So this is someone who has walked the walk. She worked for the railroad. She worked for the Food and Nutrition Services, which was an employee union for the Treasury Department. This is all before she started teaching school. But I want to introduce you to someone who has been very involved in this project of the Illinois Labor History Society, Miss Debbie Pope.
Sisters and brothers, it's a very big honor to be here. The Labor History Society, founded in 1969, has grown beyond its wildest dreams, and its mission of educating people in the general public and in the labor movement is flourishing, thanks to all of you and the work that you do and the struggles that you're involved in. And boy, are we going to be struggling in the next 4 years. We are going to get to know each other very, very well. I feel really sure of that, because the people who are here tonight, the reason we got 90 extra people at the last minute, it's because we all want to be with our like-minded sisters and brothers in this troubling period. And, you know, that's just a fact. And the person who I'm about to introduce to you, Dan Montgomery, the president of the Illinois Federation of Teachers, is somebody who's been involved, not as long as I am, because he's a young guy, but he's been involved for quite a while in the, it's all relative, Dan. I'm gonna be eligible for Medicare on my next birthday, man. So it's all relative, but basically, Dan Montgomery has been a teacher for a long time. He comes out of a city that has a fighting labor tradition, the city of Detroit, Michigan, and he's been in Chicago since the 1980s in the Chicago area. He was an English teacher for about 20 years, active in his union. When Jim Doherty became the president of the IFT, who stepped up and took Jim's position at the school and in the council in the North Suburban Teachers Federation, none other than Dan Montgomery. And you know what? Dan Montgomery is a really amazing and flexible guy. He's a guy who has learned to work with the CTU, and we ain't easy, baby. We ain't easy. He's a guy who has stepped up to the plate for a lot of fights against some mighty difficult opponents, including the one who happens to be occupying the State House now. I will not mention his name, but his initials are BR, and you know who I'm talking about. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to invite Dan Montgomery to come up to the platform, and I'd like to thank you all for the welcome you're about to give him.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you very much. Flexible, I guess. I'm flexible. That's good. Listen, I thank my lucky stars every day for Karen Lewis and the Chicago Teachers Union. So, absolutely. Thank you, Larry. Thank you to the Labor History Society. It's my honor to introduce the keynote speaker, Loretta Johnson, the Secretary-Treasurer of the American Federation of Teachers. But before I do that, I can't really stand here representing 100,000 plus pre-K to 12 teachers, school support staff, community college faculty and staff, university faculty and staff, public employees we have in the IFT, I can't come up here in this setting without mentioning one more thing about this governor and the fight that our brothers and sisters in AFSCME 31 are in, the state employees. And I just want everyone to know that the teachers in this state and everyone in the IFT will never, never not be there for you. We will never back away from the fight you're in. The fight you're in is our fight. It's the fight of working people in this state and in this country. And I want to say one other thing. When I was looking through the program in the biographies of the gentlemen who are being honored and inducted tonight, Mr. Black, Mr. Flowers, Mr. Gresham, Mr. McDaniel, look at their biographies and you'll see that they went to Edward Burke Elementary School, Willard Grammar School, DuSable High School, Crane High School, Roosevelt University, Karen, you mentioned. These are great public schools in the Chicago public school system and Roosevelt University and here in the city of Chicago. And this leadership, these men, these sort of giants of unionism and social justice were educated in Chicago public schools. So don't ever let anyone you know get away with the notion that Chicago public schools aren't a tremendous engine in this country. So, Loretta, it's really a joy to introduce you. I've known Loretta for the last 10 or 12 years that I've been involved in the AFT, and since Karen and I got on the council together in 2010, it's been a great honor to get to know you better and work with you. It's fitting that you have Loretta for this meeting that celebrates the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the Great Migration. The AFT itself, as you heard in the dramatic readings, the AFT is 100 years old this year as well. Loretta is the Secretary-Treasurer of the AFT, but she was first elected to national office in the AFT right here in the city of Chicago in 2008 when she became the Executive Vice President of the AFT at the time and then later became Secretary-Treasurer. But before that, she spent about 30 years as a member of the Executive Board, the Executive Council of the AFT, because she came out of Baltimore where she led a transformation in unionism. And she led that transformation throughout the AFT. Loretta started as a PSRP. That's a strange term that outside of the AFT you would have no idea what that means. It stands for paraprofessional and school-related personnel, but it's school support folks who do every job from the lunchroom to maintenance to school bus drivers to clerks to teachers' aides, and that's only a small percentage of the job titles. But Loretta came from that group in Baltimore in the early 70s and led them and took charge and grew into a leader in that union and then brought them together with the teachers in Baltimore and transformed not only the teachers union in Baltimore, but unions in Baltimore and in Maryland. And she led that transformation into the AFT. Notice our title, still AFT, American Federation of Teachers. But we have thousands and hundreds of thousands of school support staff that are now fully part of our union. And there's really one person who gets credit for that, in my estimation, and that's Loretta Johnson. And that's a tremendous legacy. Yes, absolutely. Along the way, and she might, I don't know if she's going to talk about this tonight, but along the way, she spent a little time in jail for leading a strike and doing the kind of fight for working people that she still does to this day. And she deserves our gratitude for that as well. When we had over the last summer, a year ago, the Democratic candidates for president came to the AFT Council. And one of them at the time was a fellow named Martin O'Malley, who had been the governor of Maryland. And it was really interesting. He's actually a very great guy, and Loretta knows him well, and he did a great job with our council. But to hear him talk about the respect he had for Loretta Johnson and what Loretta Johnson meant to the state of Maryland, and his own understanding of what unionism is and can be, is a tremendous testament to her leadership and work over the years. I guess, I would say in Baltimore and Maryland, Loretta Johnson is labor. And more recently in our own union, she did a very important and difficult thing. She helped steer our union, the AFT, through some very difficult discussions around racial equity. It's always a very difficult thing to take on and to do well and to do in a respectful, thoughtful, and deep way, and she did that. And we came out with a tremendous report that has meaning about what the AFT stands for and what we do internally in our union around racial equity, especially Michael Brunson and people like that. We talk about restorative justice, and that's something that Loretta has really helped steer us through with the AFT, and that's very important work. She'll mention Al Shanker, who was a famous AFT president for many years and kind of one of our leading lights, and she came in under Shanker, and I heard her say this once. She said, recently I heard Loretta say, "Al Shanker saw something in me I didn't see in myself." Saw something in me I didn't see in myself. And that's Loretta. She does that too. A great leader sees things in people that sometimes they don't see in themselves. And Loretta has done that for many people, PSRPs and everyone else in our union movement. Developing people to be their best and to achieve things that maybe they don't even realize they have in them or is possible. That's real leadership. And that's labor, isn't it? Isn't that what we do in labor? Isn't that what we do? We dream and we try to envision a world that doesn't really exist yet, something better, something higher. And we don't always see it at first. It's an act of imagination and an act of hope. And then it turns into an act of tough work and perseverance. And Loretta does all those things. And there's no better person I know to bring in tonight and have us talk to us than Loretta Johnson. Thank you, Loretta Johnson.
Good evening. Dan just humbled me. My work in the union was just what I did, work, family, part of me. The union became my life. I started in 1966, and I've been going ever since. So thank you so much for the warm welcome. It's just humbling to be a part of this honor of the Illinois Labor Society, History Society, and it's certainly humbling to be here with the inductees to your honor society. But before I start my speech, I have to acknowledge my friend Karen Lewis out there, Chicago Teachers Union, and certainly Debbie Pope, who invited me here this evening. I'm delighted to be with you as you commemorate your 100th anniversary of the beginning of the Great Migration, when 7 million African Americans left the South to go north, looking for a greater opportunity for themselves and for their families. I guess 2016 is a year of centennials. As Dan said, the AFT was 100 years old. And the good thing about AFT, and I've been in it now for 50 years, is we have always been in the fight. We have always been out for social justice, for democracy, for unity within the education field. So our 100th anniversary in Chicago, we went through our history, and it carried us through this, and it's going to carry us through this bad time that we're getting ready to hit. Because, one thing about unions, everybody tries to get rid of us. but we don't go anywhere. We fight to ensure that every child, Karen has been fighting, not for her teachers and her support personnel, but for the students of Chicago. High quality public education, no matter what their race, ethnicity, or sexual orientation, or the zip code they live in. In my town, it's just like Chicago. Certain zip codes is not supposed to have quality education. But I don't let that happen. We walk in all zip codes. And we fight for economic dignity, security, and justice. From raising the minimum wage to the right to join a union, to rewrite the economic rules so they work for everyone and not for those that are just at the top. And we're gonna also be with UAFGE because we know Trump is coming and we're gonna be there. Public education and the labor movement are really the one thing when it comes down to opportunity. The opportunity to get the kind of education that lets you not only dream your dreams, but to achieve them. To get the education that opens doors throughout your life to a good job, to higher education, and to being involved as a citizen. My father died when I was 14. I was number 9 of 9 kids. And I finished high school on my father's Social Security. I started as a paraprofessional, as Dan said, in 1966 in the Baltimore City Public Schools. And with my husband's help, I went on to finish college. I also have a doctor's degree. That's what education does for you. And as Dan told you, in 2008, this paraprofessional from Amity Street in Baltimore became the first executive vice president from personnel of the American Federation of Teachers. That is what we fight for, the opportunity for anybody in any zip code to go and move. So the labor movement is about giving working people that opportunity, that benefit, and the labor movement gave it to me. It's about making sure that power isn't concentrated on one side. The employer, it's about the opportunity to achieve together what we cannot achieve by ourselves. Whether it's negotiating a fair contract or electing officials who share our values or passing important legislation. The Great Migration. Our opportunity is what drove the Great Migration. After centuries of oppression, enslavement, Black Americans in the early 20th century finally had the opportunity to have a hand in their own destiny. They had the opportunity to leave the South, to seek better jobs, better treatment, and higher pay. They had the opportunity to create a new possibility for themselves and their families. And some came to Chicago, some in Baltimore, in Michigan, but they are across the country. Hundreds of thousands of migrants made their way to Chicago, many heeding to the call of the Chicago Defender to come forth. In fact, the editor of the Chicago Defender called the Great Migration the second emancipation. That may be true, but migrants didn't leave all their troubles behind. The work was grueling. In stockyards, slaughterhouse, the factories, women most often found domestic work, working long hours away from their own families. this was still segregation and discrimination. And there was still violence. One of the largest race riots in the history of the country took place in Chicago in July 1919. The riots lasted 13 days, and it left 38 people dead, 537 injured, and 1,000 black families lost their homes when they was torched during the riots. The schools for black children attended were not the schools they deserve, which sadly too often is still the case today. Addressing the problem was central to the creation of the Chicago Teaching Union and the AFT, and it still is. The Great Migration did bring about a dramatic increase in education attainments of black Americans. School attendance for black males aged 10 to 14 increased from just under half of black males in 1900 to 93% in 1950. The percentage of black males ages 15 to 20 in schools more than tripled during that time. Over the same period, illiteracy among Americans dropped from African Americans dropped from 48% to 10%. African American communities grew. So did their businesses, their churches, their political and cultural influence. We see those contributions today. What will we fight for today? The Great Migration of our day is not a geographic journey in the pursuit of opportunity. It is a civil rights journey, a social justice mission, a march for educational and economic opportunities. And our labor unions and public schools are still the center of that journey. We face attack on both, and we must defeat and support each other. We have to support each other. The attack is on labor, it's on education. We must fight for neighborhood public schools that are safe, that welcoming place for teaching and learning. We must make sure our children have an engaging curriculum and focus on teaching and learning and not testing, and include art, music, and science. I don't think I would have finished high school if it wasn't for my little clarinet I was tooting. That made me want to go to school. So we must do what we do in our best schools, in all our schools, for all our children. Here in Chicago, you are fighting the good fight, despite politicians who starve the public schools, disrespect the people who work in them, and fighting for the good fight despite officials who want to destroy unions as we know them today. So Karen, keep the fight. Keep the fight. And we're going to, I can say to you, keep the fight, because I had it in Baltimore, if you remember. They passed a bill called 795, which would have destroyed the union, but brought money into our schools who desperately needed. We were like Chicago. We had no gym, no phys ed teachers, no art, no music. They had stripped our schools of everything. And somebody said to me, "Are you going to fight 795? I said, yeah, but I'm not going to stop that money from coming to Baltimore. And so what I did is made sure 795 kept collective bargaining for the employees. Because I know if we have a voice at the table, we can fight. And right now in Baltimore, we got the money. We have a $1 billion budget for 83,000 students. Because of 795 and because the union fought to make the difference. Keep up the fight. Brothers and sisters, I don't know what stage of grief you're in. I think I'm somewhere between denial and anger, and I go back and forth. but I cannot sit on the sidelines. I've been a union fighter for over 50 years. And you know I'm getting old. I'm dating myself. But let me tell you something. As long as I have breath, I have to fight. We have to fight. We must demand that Trump denounce the hatred and violence and discrimination that is being carried out in his name. We must raise our voices. If he carries out the dangerous and divisive policies he promised on the campaign trail to build walls with our neighbors, discriminate against one of our world's greatest religions, and rigged the economy for the people like him, we must commit ourselves to making sure that all our members are engaged, empowered, and ready to go for the fight ahead. You know, we can beat Trump because we control the state and the locals and the cities, and we better go to work. This is not just being a union member, but we have to be union actives. We have to be with our families, and we have to engage that community. Because for some reason, some of them believe what Trump said. For some reason, I don't know how you can believe him, but for some reason they did. So having a one-on-one conversation with your colleagues, your families, and friends. You know, I remember I was running around carrying people to the polls to vote, and I had to go get my mama, and I said, oh, I go take her to vote. And I was driving her to the polls, and something said, ask her how she gonna vote. And I said to her, I said, Ma, how you gonna vote? She said, I'm voting for Reagan. I said, oh, hold it, wait a minute. I said, you voting for Reagan? Where'd you get that from? They raised my Social Security. People vote on issues. Now, I took her on the side and told her. She came out and told me she voted different, but you think I know whether she did or not? We have to talk to the family, too. We think they automatically know, but we have to talk to them, too. So we as union members are the only strong voice out there. And conversation will straighten out. We have to resolve and build our collective power. So, you know, when you put this hand up like this, they pick us off one at a time. You know, they can break each one of these fingers. But when we turn it around and do it like this, they have a little hell to pay. They have a little hell to pay. So beyond just engaging our members, we must also work with the community. And we have a strong ties with community partners, and we can make the community our new family. This work is not easy, and I can tell you that. Half the people don't know me no more in my family, because I don't go to any family things. I'm at everything that's union. They're having a cookout. Aunt Loretta can't be there. But I think the work that I was doing was so much important because it made them able to have the cookout. So, our strength is in our collective voices. Our members, community, and parents come together. We need to elect leaders who will stand with us and fight the social justice, for economic opportunities, for great public schools, for the right of many and not just a few. So, can we do this? Yeah. We must do this. Will we do it? Yes. Okay. Together, we can reclaim the promise of America, a strong democracy, freedom, and every man equal to the next man and woman. This is not a divisive country. As you can see, I'm kind of hyper. So, you know, I'll close out with this. If you see me in a fight with the bear, help the bear.
Dr. Loretta Johnson, American Federation of Teachers, thank you so much for being here. And now our induction. We're going to begin with Tim Black, and I would like Tim Black to come on up. Karen Lewis.
So you can Google whatever you want to about Tim Black. I'm going to tell you very quickly, he was born on December 7th. And the reason I mention that, for two reasons. One, my sister was born on December 7th, but he was born in 1918 in Birmingham, Alabama. The youngest son of sharecroppers who moved their family to Chicago in 1919, part of the first Great Migration. They encountered a city torn by recent race riots. The family settled in an area known as the Black Belt, which is what we call Bronzeville right now. It had a dense population due to the restrictive covenants that kept blacks from living in predominantly white areas. Black attended the all-black DuSable High School, where he was classmates with Nat King Cole and John Johnson, future founder of Jet and Ebony magazines. He was also heard of a young schoolmate, Harold Washington Jr., who later became mayor, as you all know, of Chicago in 1983. With his influential support. So, and you can always find him riding on the DuSable alumni float every year at the Bud Billiken Parade. So the bombing of Pearl Harbor was December 7th of 1941. You were 23. He's listening to jazz with some friends at a local bar, and they heard the news, and 2 years later, he was drafted into the U.S. Army. And he served in the 308th Quartermaster Railhead Company, which supplied ammunition, weapons, and food for combat soldiers. In his 2 years of service, he endured two of World War II's bloodiest battles, Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge. He earned 4 battle stars and the French Croix de Guerre. And if those of you that know him know that he was at Buchenwald. And I think that changed him, and he decided he had to work for social justice for the rest of his life. So he also had an experience of seeing German POWs treated much better than black soldiers during the war. So he decided to fight, and fight he has all that time. But I want to talk to you about the Tim Black I know. I have known Mr. Black all of my life. My entire life. As a matter of fact, I don't really remember a time when I didn't know, because he was my classmate's father. Timmy K. Black was one of my closest friends at Kosminski Elementary School. And Mr. Black was always involved in the PTA. He never missed an assembly and participated in bake sales and et cetera, because a lot of people don't know this, he was a single father in the 60s. can guarantee you that he was always there, not just for Timmy, but for all of us. So Google Mr. Black to see all the amazing things he's done. I just wanted you to know that he insisted on us learning. He insisted, he put things in perspective for us. And he believed that we needed to learn Black history and not just 1 week a year in February. Mr. Black told us that just because we lived in the North, we were not immune from racism and segregation and hatred. But he didn't tell us to scare us. He told us to educate us. And he said, please read critically. Know who you're reading. Who are they speaking to? Who are those authors? Who is their audience? He always taught us to think critically about everything we heard and learned. I remember he said, Malcolm X, do you remember this? You told us this story. He said, Malcolm X said that anything south of the Canadian border was the South. He always asked us grown-up questions, and he never treated us like we were little kids, but rather sentient human beings who needed the truth about the world and what justice really looks like. Tim Black, who will be 100 years old next year, is not just our treasure, he is a national treasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Timuel D. Black. You and I stand together in the
On behalf of the Illinois Labor History Society, it's my honor and pleasure as Secretary of the Society to present this award for the Union Hall of Honor to Timuel Black, a most deserving recipient.
I'll hold it while you hold it.
We gotta get over here.
Okay. So wait,
You hold it up there for me.
Can I say something?
Okay.
Can I say a couple words?
Oh, please. We're hoping you would.
I'm not gonna talk much.
one more?
Can,
Okay.
can I just say it all?
No, you got something to say, believe me. I'll put this down on the table for you. And then, okay, ladies and gentlemen, a few words from Mr. Timuel Black.
It's really doctor, but he never, he never made us call.
Sorry, Dr. Timuel Black.
That's all right.
You want to say it?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to say much more than has been said already. But I think I'll say this, and that is that I look around and I see all my friends and so many people that I've known for years and years, but I can say with honesty, I think, and accuracy to all of you here that I used to be your age. And I say that not bragging, but to encourage all of you, all of us, to keep on going. The water may be muddy, but if you keep on swimming, you will clear the mud out and be in good water. And those of my generation, particularly, regardless of their race or their gender or any of those, understand that. But we must be united. We must be organized in a way, because the opposition, regardless of how they try to consider themselves individualized, they are organized. And they're organized for one purpose, and to keep those of us who need to be organized disorganized. Now, the story goes like this. I was born December 7th, 1918. And when I was 6 months old, I looked around in Birmingham, Alabama, and I said to my mama, shit, I'm leaving here. Mama said to Daddy, Dixie, this boy getting, because my father was working in the steel mill. Mama said, Daddy, Dixie, this boy getting ready to leave here, and he doesn't even know how to change his diapers. I'm going with him. I brought my family to Chicago at that point. In 1919, August, the race riot had just been completed, but was not completely over. And the young men who had served in World War I, members of the 8th Regiment Armory, which still stands as another icon of black Chicago making its own way. These men had served in the trenches and because they were rejected as battle, although they wanted to be on the battlefield, they had been rejected by John Blackjack Pershing to be in combat, and had been adopted by the French army, Marshal Foch and Marshal Pitt, and they had spent more time. They come back, they find out the rioters going on, they broke into the armory, took out weapons to fight back, and the riot was soon over. That was the first time that had happened in America in terms of riots. Now I say that to say that America can be beautiful, but it's because we, ordinary people, will make it and have made it more beautiful than it was before. And we cannot, for the future, for ourselves in the present, and for the future of our generations to come, our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all universal, we cannot believe that a change cannot come. As Sam Cooke said, a change is going to come. But it takes those of you in this room, to help make that change occur and to create the kind of optimism that must have existed when my ancestors, on my African side, my ancestors who had watched many of their relatives being extinguished because they had the idea, before I'll be your slave, I'll be buried in my grave, the old sin. Had that attitude and they died. My ancestors and those of you from African backgrounds had ancestors who said, I'm so glad that trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, what must I do? They knew you were going to be here. You owe them. That's not just race. That crosses all lines of life. And they come and do it because they feel a sense of the future, and they're organized to make that future come true for those who will follow. And so I am so deeply honored that I'm so sorry that I am not prepared to say very much, but I hope. Because I see the future in this room. I see the future despite the sadness that we've gone through, that we cannot, and many of us have seen things like that in Germany, in Italy, and in other places in the South. But we saw a future, and we believe that trouble don't last always. And we must go forward. We owe it to the future because we are the products, the positive products of those who were thoughtful in the past. Thank you so much for this honor. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Tim Black, everyone. Board member Katie Jordan. Katie Jordan, the ubiquitous Katie Jordan, will you please come up, because we would like to also bring up Elwood Flowers. Mr. Flowers. Our tradition is that we ask a board member to be part of the induction, and so I think we're also going to have ATU President Kenneth Franklin. Those of you who don't know, Mr. Franklin is president of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 308 in Chicago. He is responsible for protecting the collective bargaining rights of over 4,500 active and retired Chicago Transit Authority workers who work on the rail side. He has served in this position for almost 2 years. Mr. Franklin's going to do the induction.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Black, I just want you to know I'm from Birmingham, Alabama also. When the bombing occurred and the 4 little girls were killed, my great-grandmother lived on the hill up from that church, and my mother said, I'm getting the hell out of here. Karen Lewis, I think you got something to do with me speaking behind you for the 3rd time. I'm going to ask that you stop that, because I got a lot of experience to gain speaking behind you. I have been charged with a very honorable task of introducing a man who has been tremendous to me, a tremendous mentor, a father figure, a union stallion. He's been in the union world over 50 years. Started with Chicago Transit Authority 13 years ago, started going to union meetings, and there was a African-American, Bernie Sanders, at the union meetings, speaking and commanding attention of the audience at that meeting. When Brother Flowers would stand up and speak with such strong articulation, he would just captivate the members in attendance in the meeting, and I was one of them. He inspired me to learn how to talk. He inspired me to have kahunas, to stand up in the meeting, just inspired me beyond to the point that I'm the president of the union today. I won my election a Tuesday in December of 2014. Friday night of that week, Brother Flowers called me at approximately 9:45 at night. He says, Ken, are you coming to the press release for Chuy Garcia? The former president had a press release, and he was announcing that the local was going to support Chuy Garcia. I said, who the hell is Chuy Garcia? I don't know if I want to do all that. And he said, Ken, don't start no shit. Excuse me, children. So I said, okay, Brother Flowers, I won't rock the boat. I came to the press release Saturday morning, stood beside the former president, former officers, and the local endorsed Chuy Garcia. And we went on to develop a excellent relationship in the last mayoral race. Elwood Flowers, if I read all of this information on him, I wouldn't have to even introduce him. You just start salivating and everything over him. But I'll just touch a few points. Brother Flowers attended DuSable High School. He went to the Navy for 4 years and served our country. Served the Chicago Transit Authority for 37 years before he retired in 1993. Brother Flowers was part of the ATU 308, ATU 241 strike in 1968. He was the president of our local for 2 terms. I can tell you that Brother Flowers works tirelessly, and we should give his lovely wife a round of applause for that. He works tirelessly and will not take 1 penny from the local. Not 1 penny from the local. He pushes me beyond the brinks. This brother calls me and says, Ken, you got to do this. Okay, Brother Flowers, I'll go, I'll be there. And I don't know where I would be if he had not been a mentor that he has been for me in 23 months. I love him. He has, he has became so much for our local, so much. Everyone loves him and respects him. He's got over 50 years in our local world. And I just like to say, Brother Flowers, congratulations. You're very deserving of this. And if everyone would please stand and give Elwood Flowers a deeply, deeply deserved round of applause.
And on behalf of the Illinois Labor History Society and being a board member, it is truly an honor for me to be able to present this to this special man. Because not only do I know him as a labor person, but he has been a male mentor to me. He is the type that will tell you where to get off and where it is you're wrong and how to get back on the right track. I'll tell you that with Brother Flowers. And so it is an honor for me to present to you this. And you are a stalwart. You're still a leader. We still admire all the things that you continue to do.
Thank you. What you've heard is that I talk a lot. And somehow tonight I'm a bit subdued. I mean, how do you follow what my president has said and what my accomplishments in his eyes have been? And also, the tremendous words we got from our great professor, Tim Black. I can only, in talking with Stephanie, who's responsible, again, as you heard early on, the gathering that we have this evening, and talking with Stephanie was the fact that she's very good individual in inquiring and pulling out of you the things that somehow you thought you had forgotten. And one of the main questions was, Elwood, how did you really get involved in the union movement as a transit worker? And all of us, regardless of where we came from, there's 2, 3, maybe a handful of individuals on your new work site that you pay respect to, that somehow gathers your listening. And in that, we had a gentleman on the property in 61st Street Yard after being hired in 1956 as an elevated motorman. His name was Dave Shepard. He's gone now, but he was one of those gentlemen that passed on to me why it is necessary for you to infuse in the young around you to continue to do more than just show up for an 8-hour day. And many times I have mentioned that to all those that were in my presence. You tell me you do 8 hours and you think you get a six-pack and sit in front of the television set and you've done your duty? You don't want to talk to me, and I'm not going to let you repeat that to me. The idea is that you are a community member, you are a family member, you are an uncle, you're a dad, brother, sister, all of those things, but it never stops after 8 hours. It continues on. And the greatest thing that one of the, again, not one of the, but Stephanie asked, she said, well, what occurred, Elwood, in far as you getting involved in the union? And that was one of the things that Switchman greatly revered by us. And the fact that he asked me one day, El, what you doing Tuesday about 8 o'clock? This may have been 8, 10 months on the job. I said, not a thing. He said, well, come on down with us. We're going to union meeting. That would have been late or early 1957, gentle people. Rarely missed a union meeting from that point forward. And lo and behold, after about 10 or 12 years seniority, we understand that our sister local, which under these terms is 241, bus operators of the Chicago Transit Authority, they were meeting on a Sunday. They were having difficulties. We joined that meeting, just came in, sat down, and here was a room full of black bus operators, really were full of rancor and anger. They were telling us about the pitiful state they was having once a month with their union, paying dues religiously once a month. But when they show up at the union meeting, it was almost like, I guess, apartheid in South Africa. Whites on one side, blacks on the other. When the white operators got through with their business of the day, blacks never were recognized. Another hand would raise up and the meeting was adjourned. They could only take so much of that, and at the time prior to this wildcat strike, we had went out and sat with them, and they had told us what their problem was. And right now, sisters and brothers, when I mentioned that strike and a lot of other labor leaders didn't know the background of it, they say, well, what you guys were being treated roughly by the CTA management? I said, oh, hell no. We were getting along fine with management. Problem, we were paying union dues and not getting respect on the union floor. And that happened month after month after month. And this one day in July, prior to the 4th of July, I'm a elevated train southbound Jackson Park, Howard Street motorman. I pull into 35th Street southbound and I can see right down from my motorman cab all four corners of 35th and State. It must have been almost 1,000 people there. and I'm wondering what had occurred. I get relieved southbound, get off, go down and talk to my mentor at that time, still, the gentleman I mentioned earlier, told him what had occurred. We then found out our sister, union members, Local 241, had struck the CTA. Withdrew services. All buses, at least on the south side, ceased to move. I go down and speak to those who were in front of me, of course, and that I had faith in. They knew it was a strike. Say, well, what do we do? Because, let's look at the logistics of it. Bus operators struck, that wouldn't make a dent, because people would just walk 2 or 3 blocks to get on the L train and go wherever the hell they wanted to go. No problems with the authority, no problems with our union leadership, but we felt that we had to have solidarity, and without a doubt, I was told that let's strike. One of my jobs was to stop every train that night. Gentleman on the west side, he was stopped every train on that night on his section. And the Wildcat strike began. 4 days. 4 days. We stayed out. And at the same time, trying to talk to our sister leadership, those who were in leadership positions at that time from Local 241. We intend to run for office the next period of time that it occurred. We had made our union meetings, and that we intend to at least run for those offices that would be available. That occurred. Unfortunately, the Wildcat leadership struck one more time. The first time we struck, we was out 4 days. Everybody came back. No one was disciplined. No one was fired. Leadership, again, could not control the anger for whatever reason, and another strike occurred. That time, we lost 100 bus operators, and our sister local went into receivership. What that means, and you all are aware of it, all the officers are dispelled, and the International comes in and runs it until it gets back on track again. Meanwhile, this is in July or August, 308 members go right ahead into November election. I ran for assistant board member on the South section, was successful, and been there ever since. I want to say in closing, sisters and brothers, that I have always, even prior to being involved with the union, softball team, anything that gathered workers together for the same cause and try to express themselves and relieve themselves also of a little pin-up anger and stuff like that. But it's been my thought that you can't stop doing what is supposed to be the correct thing to do. How old did Tim say he was? And you know, we serve on boards together. We have one of our chairmen of one of the most progressive groups in the city and probably the country, Citizen Action, and we have William sitting right here with us. Tim came in tonight. William McNary, head of Citizen Action. And so it's those kinds of things that we continue to do and cannot ever stop doing. We've got a challenge. You've heard it. You know what the battle plans are. We've had these challenges before, and what happens? We're still here. We are still here, fighting strong. Understand that. And just to the extent, I have my family here, extended family, and I just wanted to make sure we had a crowd tonight. Could I, this 6 and 7, is my family, and also on the issue of trying to spread myself out as far as can wherever there's a group of people. I also have with me this evening members of my 81st and Rhodes Block Club members. They're also here tonight. And so I want to thank the Illinois Labor History Society. They have a great tradition, and it is a great pleasure. I'm very humbled to be here this evening and to receive this award, and I really appreciate your attendance and thanking me this evening. Thank you so much.
Katie Jordan, you have a double shift. The ubiquitous Katie Jordan from our board, you are going to help us out with El Cosi right now. Oh, goodness gracious. President Tommy Sands, Local 241, and the daughter of El Cosi Gresham, Denise Gresham Knox. And a number of others are coming up because this is a great family.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tommy Sams, President Business Agent, ATU Local 241, Chicago. We operate the buses. For our brother, no, we're here for El Cosi Gresham, but I also want to tell Elwood Flowers, from your extended family, congratulations. You know, I didn't have the pleasure of knowing Brother Gresham. He passed away in the year 2000, long before I became a union president, and at the time was active in the union, but I still don't know. I think it's only fitting and proper that we have this family, which is his family. We have one active and the rest are retired officers that did know him.
Right.
So we're gonna have Danny Bishop speak on his behalf, and I think it's only fitting and proper that the daughter receive the award.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tommy, President Sams has said, is Danny Bishop. I am a retiree pensioner since 2000. I'm an activist. I've been an activist most of my life. I want to first thank Local 241 308, the Illinois Labor History Society on this prestigious occasion. And I'm standing before this esteemed audience to speak in behalf of our honorarium, brethren and former president of Local 241 and a servant of 241, the late Mr. El Cosi Gresham. I'm going to stick with Mr. Gresham, although I know Mr. Timuel Black, I know the yeoman's work that Mr. Elwood Flowers has done in my tenure. I've been retired since the year 2000, as I said. Now, when President Sams asked me to speak, I agonized over coming up and saying these words, because I know that there are many people in this audience, a few in this audience, Mr. Morris and several others, that were more, let's say, familiar with Mr. Gresham, probably or closer to both of them than I. But I want to speak briefly on Mr. El Cosi Gresham and stick with that and his tenure. And as you've read in the booklet that you have before you there, Mr. Gresham started with the Chicago Transit Authority July 6, 1951. He joined the local union, Amalgamated Transit Union, September 1951. He was elected executive board member at the 77th Street Garage in July 1972, and he served there until 1975. And this is important. He was re-elected executive board member at 77th Street, 1975 until 1978. He was elected first vice president in 1978 to 1981. Re-elected first vice president 1981 to 1984. Now this is some history here. He was elected president and business agent of Local 241 in July of 1984 and served there until 1987, re-elected again July 1987 until 1990. He was elected for a total of 6 terms, unheard of. And I'm going to come back to that. I became acutely aware and baptized, if you will, in the labor movement in 1979 during the CTA strike. I was front and center, standing, fighting back, and walking the picket line. Because of my activism, it was right on point for me to be out there on the picket line. That was just what we needed. Back then, we had an acronym for the CTA. It was called Cover Thy Ass, CTA. I vividly recall the CTA's union-busting assaults in violation of our contract. And at that time, we had in 1979 a mayor, and I'm going to ask the audience here, do we remember who the mayor was in 1979? Who? Anybody all at once? Anybody know who Jane Byrne. And Jane Byrne was the mayor that said she was not going to take anything from this transit authority. She would have her daughter Kathy drive the bus. Well, we know how that worked out. We were faced with privatizing, ripping up our contract, as Mr. Flowers had mentioned there, violation of contract, pension givebacks, refusing to bargain in good faith, service cuts and major reductions, especially in underserved communities, and outright racism. Wage cuts, refusal to pay overtime, no pay for lunch breaks, and the main caveat that the CTA wanted was part-time workforce. That was 50% that they were asking. And Mr. Okozie Gresham, along with our other fearless leaders, said hell no to part-time workers. And we didn't give in to that. That was one of the main reasons we struck. There's strength, and I'm going to be very succinct, there's strength in unionism. There's strength in unionized struggle. We don't have a lot of money, but we do have human capital. We do have people. That's power. If you don't have money, you better have people. Okay, and you better organize those people. Transportation, different than any other entity, is a situation where you can't outsource it. You can't send it to China. You can't send it to Mexico. So the CTA, we understood that. Mr. Gresham understood it, Mr. Leonard Morris, and all of us understood the unity and the power that we had collectively, because transportation is really the lifeline of any metropolitan city. We're the blood that flows through the veins of the city. When we strike, we cripple and paralyze the city. That's power. We got to learn to use it. So in conclusion, again, I want to thank the President, Mr. Tommy Sams, for giving me this opportunity to honor Mr. Okozie Gresham. To the family, I hope that we're doing you proud by standing here with you. And we want to continue to collectively use our strength, our working class strength, to not only have a seat at the table, but we're going to determine what the menu is going to be. And we want to thank you for listening.
Good evening. I'm going to make it short. I have a 2-page little speech I had ready, but I'm going to leave that because I just want to say these pictures speak for itself. This one up here, that's our history. Mr. Flowers and my dad worked hard together. And when they worked to get Harold Washington elected, Harold Washington gave them both his phone number on a little piece of paper they had in their wallet. He told them to call him any time of the night. That's the kind of relationship they had. We can't say enough to say in saying thank you for this honor from my dad. He loved his union. He loved working for CTA those 39 years. My sister was almost 3 years old when he started, and I wasn't even born. He started working for CTA in September, and we were both born in September. He was married in September, so maybe that had something to do with it. However, we know he's smiling down tonight. He was an humble person. Praise was not what he worked for. He just wanted to make sure he served his membership correctly. And I just want to leave you with these things that we remember from my dad. He gave his heart and soul when he worked every day. He taught us an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. He always said that when he had to go represent someone, he said, tell me, look me in the eye, and tell me the truth of what had occurred, so that he would know what he was walking into, so he could represent them correctly. It was as simple as that. And yes, he was known as the worker for the little guy. He always said nobody leaves home and comes to work, to their job, expecting to be injured or to get in any trouble. And he wanted his membership to know that their union was always there for them. Every member was important. So tonight, we just want to say, even though he was 6.5 feet tall, when he came to represent his local 241 members, he stood 6 feet tall. He was never threatened by anything or anyone, and we all understood that. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Now, I feel kind of special tonight, right now, myself. Here for two giants, both from the same union. My brother L. Cozy Gresham knew him from the time he first became president of that local. He was always supportive of all the issues that we talked about, that the unions need to take care of the women issues. And I just, on behalf of the Illinois Labor History Society and the entire board, it is my honor and my great pleasure to present you with this award in memory of your father and all of the work that he did for the entire labor movement. We will always remember him. We always cherish the work that he did. It is not forgotten. He is one of our giants, one of our stalwarts. He has been a mentor to us all, and we have done a lot of things based on what we learned from him. So thank you for allowing us to be in your father's family.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
And I just want to say, I had taught for 37 years myself, and I was a member of the Chicago Teachers Union also.
Our last awardee, inductee into the Union Hall of Honor, is Milton McDaniel. And stay around right after that very briefly. Very briefly, we have a I Say Something Great, a raffle prize and a song. Would Brother Milton McDaniel Sr. please come up, along with the Illinois Labor History Society board member Judy Simpson, Joseph Sosbo, and Robert Guy. Some of you may know Joe Sosbo, who is a serves as the Chicago Metropolitan Agency, is planning. He's the executive director of the planning agency, and Robert Guy is a 22-year member of SMART TD, formerly UTU, and he is state director for the Illinois Legislative Board of Smart Transportation Division. I should also add, in case somebody didn't read it, that today is Milton McDaniel Day in Carbondale, Illinois. Milton McDaniel. Like the man behind the curtain here.
Well, Larry stole my thunder there. I was going to ask if everyone was having a good Milton McDaniel Sr. Day. It may be in Carbondale, but it might as well be everywhere, right? Well, it's a rail-heavy night, which makes us railroaders proud. You heard from Ken and Brother Elwood Flowers earlier about the rich history of rail, not only in Chicago, but if you get on what is now an Amtrak train out of the Union Station and take it south through Champaign-Urbana, you'll come to Carbondale, Illinois, something our next honoree, place he knows very well, lifelong resident. Did you bring the Saluki up? The Saluki train that runs to Carbondale, Illinois, a lifelong resident of Carbondale, Illinois. But it's an honor and privilege to be here tonight, and thank you for being here. Mike Matika with the Illinois Labor History Society, who's standing here today. At our meeting earlier this year, our statewide meeting, he gave a presentation on the history of rail labor, and it blew everyone away in our group. And imagine the opportunity to come here tonight and actually meet and present someone who's lived it and has the stories to back it up. Imagine 1967 being an African-American railroader, something that was new, especially in Carbondale, Illinois. The fortitude, the bravery must have been tremendous. I shouldn't tell the story, it's in the program, but I'm proud of our forefathers, so to speak, of when certain establishments treated Brother McDaniel that way, that they stood up and left the establishment. But can you imagine having to deal with that back then? But a near 50-year member of United Transportation Union. The stories when we were talking before the dinner, and there's probably not enough time tonight for railroaders to gather on a stage, because once you get together, the stories just start flowing, and I can tell Milton's stories just started coming out, and it's fantastic. You can tell it's in his heart, it's in his blood, and I couldn't be happier today to help presenting him into the Hall of Honor of the Illinois Labor History Society. So I want to thank him personally. Yes, please. And thank you, Brother McDaniel, for allowing us to be part of it. Something I'll never forget, and I hope it's something obviously him and his lovely family will never ever forget. And I want to thank him for his trailblazing, because not only, for himself, like he said earlier, the money was too good for anyone to let anybody bother him. He wasn't going anywhere. But thank you, Milton. Joe, did you want to say anything? Former Illinois Central employee, by the way.
So I just want to make one comment about the significance of Milton's achievement. If you think about the Great Migration from the South, up to Chicago, it was the railroad. It was the Illinois Central Railroad in particular that brought the African Americans from Louisiana and Mississippi up here to Chicago. And so for Milton to become the first African American to work in the operating crafts is that extra, just an extra level of significance. And so, I think there's kind of a double significance to it. The fact that that was the bloodline of the Great Migration, and you were one of the first, or you were the first African American to actually work as a locomotive engineer. So.
And you'll notice on the lapel here, Milton's wearing it proudly. He's got his Illinois Central pin on, and as I believe, is it your 45-year UTU pin on. So as we bring him up, he's going to get a smart pin as well. Brother McDaniel. Mine? I knew that was going to happen.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Mr. McDaniel, on behalf of the Illinois Labor History Society, I am proud to present you this memento of your induction into the Union Hall of Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service to labor.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Illinois Labor History Society, but most of all, I'd like to thank God. Without him, I wouldn't be here, because down through the last 40-some years, there was a lot of times that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. He talked about the travels going through. I don't know if any of you all know where that little town called Cairo, Illinois is. Well, you see, in 1967, my first trip on a train for pay was from East St. Louis to Cairo, Illinois. And when I got to Cairo, Illinois, I got off the train with the rest of my crew. And I don't know if any of you all ever traveled that little road called US 51. See, there wasn't no 57 back then. Well, right there where US 51 and Route 3 came together was a motel. Probably one of the two motels in Cairo at that time. Cairo, not only like a lot of other cities in the 60s and 66 and 67, was having their racial problems, including Chicago. I remember, 63rd, where the Sears building and everything were down there in Halsted. Well, I got off the train with the crew, went to the motel, and it was my first time and never knew what to do, so I watched the rest of the crew. They went in, signed their name, and got them a key, and off to their room they went. I went up, signed my name. The proprietor looked at me and said, "Boy, what do you want?" I said, "Well, I'd like to have a room. Whatever they getting." He looked at me, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He looked at me and said, "I don't care what the hell you want. Don't no niggas stay here." And 18 years old. I said, "Well, I'd like to lay my head down somewhere." He said, "Not here, not in this motel." At the time, I was dating my wife of almost 50 years. She lived 12 miles from that motel. And good thing I had a Chevrolet. I shift one foot and let the other one follow for 12 miles, and I walked to her house, and her mom let me sit up on the couch. Back then, moms, they wouldn't go to bed if you were there with their daughter, so. And they found a way to get me back to Cairo, to the motel the next morning, the next day, to take my train back to St. Louis. That was just the first time. for pay. The very, very first time that I ever, right there in Carbondale, Illinois, I ever got up on a passenger train, taking a passenger train from Carbondale, Illinois to St. Louis, Missouri. I was just a fireman, just hired out. There was two elderly white ladies came up and they looked up in the cab and one said to the other, "Mary, look at that up there." And they said, "Is he black? Is that a," well, beep, beep. And she said, "Yeah, I think it is." I said, "Oh, we ain't going nowhere riding with him." So they went back and demanded their money back from the ticket agent and said, "We're not riding nowhere with him." What they didn't know at that time was I was not the engineer. I was just a fireman. I wasn't even driving. And what I said to them, I don't care if this train go empty or full, I get the same amount of money. You know, so I don't care if you don't ride. It's hard to think that people can come to conclusions all because of the color of your skin. And I say this, that if you cut us, we're all going to bleed the same color of blood. Skin color is only skin deep. And if it wasn't for the color of the skin, just think about God and his rainbow. He made a rainbow for a reason, to show the beauty of all of his colors. And with my fellow smart, I almost said UT back here, what he was talking about in East St. Louis. When I started out in East St. Louis, it was in 1967. East St. Louis had a population of 89,000 people. 80% of them was black. I went into the union meeting for the first time in August of '67 in a little place called Shop City. They had a bowling alley there. There we held our union meeting. And it was probably every bit of 15 to 20 people there. They served everybody but me. And a town of 80% black, but in a white establishment in a bowling alley. And my chairman of my union said, "Why haven't you served him?" And she said, "Oh, he looks like he's too young." And he said, "But you serve this other young man and they're the same age." And she said, "Well, yeah, but we just don't serve his kind here." And like I say, being in a strong union, this is my first union meeting. My chairman of the union at that time was BLF&E, which was Brotherhood of Locomotive Firemen and Engineers. He said to the rest of the guys, "Y'all drink up all that you're drinking. Drink up, finish it up, and when you get through, let me know we're leaving here. And we're not paying for it, and we're never coming back again." And that's a union. That's a strong union. And from that day forward, I decided I'm going to be a union man. And we never went back there. We found another bar where they could drink and have good times. I mean, drinking just wasn't for me, but that was how I thought of how the union stood up for me. And from that day forward, and now, with almost 50 years behind me, that I'm still with the union and I believe in the union. And I'm not only is my UTU brothers and sisters part of, but I believe in the union because I was also the first African American for my labor people that's here to go into the sheet metal union. I hold a sheet metal journeyman card as well. And I was the first one of those in Southern Illinois to do that. So I definitely believe in the union. I believe in hard work, and I believe that whatever that you believe in, I remember what my daddy said, "Son, get you a job that you like. That way you'll go to work every day instead of a job you're going just for the pay. If you got one just for the pay, you probably will get tired of it. But thank God, like he said a while ago, the pay was so good I didn't give a care what they said." There was no way they was going to run me away. And one of the last things that I'll say before I go to my seat, out of all the years that I worked out there, I probably never got the respect that I deserved. And after me, there's probably, Illinois Central has probably hired probably in the neighborhood of maybe 10 to 12 other black engineers over the whole period of time, me being the first. But I'll say this, that if you really believe in something, you'll stick with it. No matter how hard it seems to be. If you love what you're doing and you love the people you work with, you'll stick with it. And as I told my union fellow back here earlier this evening, I told him, you know, I never got the respect behind that throttle. I never got the respect. And I said to you guys, you don't have to like me, but I be damned, you will learn to respect me. After all, I'm the one that's running this train. Many a times that they used to call and say, well, where is Mac at? And you know, it made me feel good because in Southern Illinois, it's a little different from up here. In Southern Illinois, there was a lot of little Jim Crow towns, and sometimes they'd bring the train in and it would block all the crossings. And they said, where's Mac at? This whole town is sold up. I'd sit on the outskirts of town just for a little while longer and let that town get sold up a little more. Then I'd come in and they said, well, where you been? I said, well, you're late. I said, I'm not late, I'm here. You know, well, the town is sold up. I said, you know what's good? I thought to myself, this black man got this whole town sold up. But I say this, and I say to my family, to my son and my grandson, what my dad instilled in me, I hope that you all are learning it. You have to work hard. You love what you're doing and do it right, and do it for the right reason. And you're talking about the migration of the North. I'll say this as I go to my seat. I like to dedicate this tonight to my granddaddy and my dad. My granddaddy, that same bridge that crossed the Ohio River that separated the South from the North at Cairo, Illinois, my granddaddy walked 2 states, from Tennessee to Illinois, leading a cow with a 2-year-old son on his shoulder to freedom. That's where I got my strength from. And my dad instilled it in me. That same bridge. I was learned from him through my dad what it meant to really have your family at heart. Then he came to Illinois and he raised a family. So thank you all, my union, my person here from Carbondale that inducted me, Miss Judy, and to all you all, and I say thank you, and may God bless each and every one as you help me.
Okay, everyone. Milton McDaniel, Tim Black, Alcosi Gresham, Elwood Flowers, thank you for being here for all of us, and we'll always be there for you.